downtown Cleveland, Ohio. A little snowy, kind of reminds you of that Pittsburgh Steelers Cleveland Browns game the other day. A lot going on here downtown. Hope everyone stays safe on the road if you're in the greater Cleveland area. As we're going to do Raw Takes a little differently today, as we're going to go over the sports highlights and topics with me, Andrew Hody, right here in downtown Cleveland in the snow from my truck. Welcome to today's Raw Takes. Welcome to Raw Takes with Andrew Hody. Today, live from my defrosting Ram 1500 right now. Like and subscribe, comment if you enjoy the show. As always, hope everyone's staying safe. If you're up in the north, if you're down south in Florida or Georgia or somewhere warmer, then kudos to you. I wish I was you right now. As much as I love my home city of Cleveland, Ohio, this weather gets pretty cold, and that's what's going on up here. Like, comment, subscribe. I want to give a shout out to some recent comments we got from David the Bowler. Once again, giving his thoughts on the Chip Kelly situation with Ohio State at the time and comparing that to Ryan Day. I also want to give a shout out to the original Mike D on Instagram who commented his thoughts on Ohio State moving on from Ryan Day. Thank you guys for your comments and your support of Raw Takes, and hopefully you're staying tuned in this video. Hope everyone is having a great day today. Lots going on in the sports world. The Browns announcing some stadium stuff this morning. That's pretty big in terms of what's going on with the Cleveland Browns. You take a look at what's going on this weekend. They play the Pittsburgh Steelers again. How fitting up here in Cleveland. It's snowing, but it's supposed to be pretty nice in Pittsburgh this weekend. So that's going to be huge in terms of the standings for where the Browns may sit and the Pittsburgh Steelers. A chance to play some spoilers down there. Jameis Winston, of course, looked overall really, really good in that game on Monday. If you take away his pick sixes, I thought he played great football overall. He's just not careful with the football. That's the biggest flaw Jameis has always had. So that's going to have to be a big consideration going into this weekend when it comes to Jameis Winston. Can you stop turning the ball over? Coming from tonight, though, the Cleveland Cavaliers playing a big one as well against the Denver Nuggets. We'll talk about that in a little bit. The NFL world, let's keep it football for a minute, though. How about the Green Bay Packers going to Detroit to take on the Lions? That's a dome team, so it will be indoors. I don't know what the weather's like in Detroit, Michigan right now either way. But a dome game, the Detroit Lions trying to stay as hot as they can be. They've won 10 straight games. Dan Campbell, of course, doing a phenomenal job. We know what Jared Goff and that high-powered offense could do, the running game with Jahmyr Gibbs. You look at another guy on the Detroit Lions defense in Zadarius Smith now, as the Detroit Lions are pretty banged up defensively, but they've still been playing overall really well. Kind of got in some trouble against the Chicago Bears on Thanksgiving, so these division games could go either way. We do know, though, that the Detroit Lions absolutely took it to Green Bay in poor weather conditions, and the Green Bay Packers looked like the mess, and they're the ones that play outside. But Green Bay today, they can rebound from that. They did win in Detroit last year, and that's when the Detroit Lions started to get hot. So there has been some success from the Green Bay Packers in Detroit, Michigan in recent games, I should say. I don't want to say recent years because the Detroit Lions actually are leading the series since 2020. Having said that, though, the Green Bay Packers with a huge opportunity today to kind of increase their wild card chances, which I think they're going to do anyway, and try to decline a little bit of the Detroit Lions hype to win the division. I still think the Detroit Lions are going to win the division. I think they're going to win tonight because they need this game actually more than the Green Bay Packers. I think the Green Bay Packers essentially are a wild card team playing with house money to try to spoil the NFC North for the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions, essentially, they're the ones who need this win more because they need to stay in front of this division because Minnesota's trailing them by only a game and Green Bay by 2. Green Bay is in third place in this division, but only by 2 games. So it's really critical for the Detroit Lions to come away with a victory tonight. And that's where the pressure is going to be on Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions to try to get back to winning this division yet again, and putting aside, when you look at the Green Bay Packers, what they're doing and how they're trailing and catching up to you. So it's going to be huge for the Detroit Lions to win this game. They're going to need it more than ever, especially. So the Detroit Lions are going to have to get this win tonight if they want to keep their hopes for the NFC North still going. Having said that, too, you look at the Green Bay Packers. They're definitely going to be a wild card team from the way things look right now. Minnesota's a little bit further ahead of them. I still think they can catch Minnesota by the end of the year. I'm not so sold on the Sam Darnold situation. I think Minnesota's essentially playing with house money. Detroit has the tiebreaker with every NFC North team right now because of the recent head-to-head matchups. But Detroit has yet to host Green Bay and Minnesota, and they have to go to Chicago one more time to play the Bears. So I think holding a tiebreaker over Green Bay is going to be huge for the Detroit Lions. They're going to have to come away with a victory tonight, and I'm going to predict they do so. I think the Detroit Lions do come away with the victory. They're going to win the game. I'm going to say 27-21. I think it's going to be a lot closer. I think the Packers make it a little hectic, and we saw from the game against the Chicago Bears that the Detroit Lions, they get down to the thick of it when it comes to playing divisional opponents. So I think that's going to be huge for the Lions tonight, but I'm still going to take them to win the game. That's going to be big for Detroit and the Lions. And Green Bay, as I said, I think they're really just playing for let's see if we can win the division at this point. I think they're going to be in the playoffs no matter what happens. But the Detroit Lions, think about this, since the Detroit Lions and the Philadelphia Eagles have played the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they're undefeated. So the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have some actually pretty solid wins, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are somewhat catching up in that division right now to the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons still have the tiebreaker at 6-6, but also the Buccaneers are 6-6, and I would say the Buccaneers have more playmakers, more talent. I think those games were definitely catching Atlanta maybe at the wrong time if you're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, excuse me. I think if you are the Atlanta Falcons right now, you're kind of feeling a lot worse about where you are because of how you're losing games. You let the Denver Broncos blow you out bad. You let the Seattle Seahawks earlier this year blow you out pretty bad too. So I'm not so sold on the Falcons. We see that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers can play some pretty competitive football. And you look at the fact the Bucs just struggled against the Carolina Panthers too. Are you really that sold on them as well? I'd say so far, so good, yes. Baker Mayfield did enough to help the Buccaneers win that game. They got the ball to his playmakers. Mike Evans being back will be huge. When Chris Godwin's back and fully healthy, that's going to be huge too for the Tampa Bay. I think if you look at Tampa Bay and how they're constructed and how they play defense, especially with Todd Bowles as the head coach, they should win that division theoretically, but that tiebreaker may hold them back, but they're going to have to keep winning games and holding the Atlanta Falcons back in the standings. The New Orleans Saints are clearly a mess. They're not going anywhere. And Carolina looks a lot better. I think they're going to win some games down the stretch here because we saw essentially what we can see from Bryce Young. He's played incredible football so far. He has done a terrific job for the Carolina Panthers in the recent weeks. And I like what Dave Canales is doing for that Carolina offense. They're still a bad organization. I still think they have a long way to go, but they are fun to watch right now. The Carolina Panthers weren't watchable last year. They're definitely watchable this year. Other big news, you look at Trevor Lawrence. He has been ruled out for the remainder of the season, and I think that's the right call, depending on his head injury that he had this week. Of course, there was a suspension on behalf of the Houston Texans for it. Probably the right decision at this point. He did apologize, of course, but yeah, what a significant injury for the Jacksonville Jaguars. But granted, I don't think Trevor Lawrence has been as bad as maybe it says because, you know, you look at the Jacksonville Jaguars, they're such a bad team to begin with. Overall, though, I think the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to fire Doug Peterson, obviously, at the end of the year. They're going nowhere to begin with. They're, I think, right now in line to get the first pick in the draft. Load that team, rebuild it more with a new head coach. I think the Jacksonville Jaguars are back competing with the Houston Texans for supremacy in the AFC South. You look at the Houston Texans, they look like they're kind of on the verge of struggling down the rest of the season. I don't think that's going to happen because they do have some easy opponents, but they did lose to Tennessee not too long ago. C.J. Stroud should hold it together, but some tough opponents left on the schedule. The Texans still have yet to play the Kansas City Chiefs. They have yet to play the Baltimore Ravens, who beat them in a playoff game last year. And the Baltimore Ravens right now, they look like they're going to struggle to win that division with the Pittsburgh Steelers ahead of them and with the tiebreaker. But I'll tell you what, Baltimore Ravens still a tough out, and the Houston Texans are going to have to try to figure out a way around that. Obviously, you look at the Pittsburgh Steelers and their schedule. That's going to be a big game with them and the Cleveland Browns this weekend. For me, it's just, can the Browns ruin the Steelers' season a little bit more? I'm not really ecstatic about the Browns trying to win a game in a place they have not won since 2003 in the regular season at the very least. I'm not including the playoff game in 2020. So Pittsburgh is definitely in prime position. You look at Baltimore, you look at the Houston Texans right now with C.J. Stroud, as I said. I think I'm rooting for that former Buckeye and C.J. Stroud, but I'm not so sure the Houston Texans are really that great of a football team. I think they're a good football team. I see them struggling with Kansas City and maybe the Baltimore Ravens, but I still think they're going to make the playoffs. If they have any problems winning that division, then the Indianapolis Colts somehow went on a tear and the Texans absolutely collapsed. I don't think that's going to happen. But, you know, you lose to the Tennessee Titans, that makes me a little nervous. But it's any given Sunday in the NFL, and clearly the Tennessee Titans aren't going anywhere either. Looking at the AFC East right now, Buffalo clearly in the driver's seat, should easily win that division. The Jets are going nowhere. Dolphins are kind of in the thick of things with the wild card race. I thought they could get hot at the end of the year. Doesn't look like that's going to happen. Mike McDaniel's seat's probably getting a little hotter there. I don't think it should be, though, because I think injuries plague the Dolphins season, and I think they struggle in poor weather. I mean, if you look at the weather here in Cleveland, if they were to play in Cleveland right now, probably not a great situation for them. So, yeah, definitely not good for the Miami Dolphins right now. You look at the New England Patriots, they're going nowhere. So Buffalo should easily win that division. The AFC, it's going to come down to the wild card race. Will you have a Pittsburgh or a Baltimore as opposed, because one of those two is going to win the division. And then you look at the Chargers and the Broncos. Those are your likely wild card teams right there. I like everything I'm seeing from the Chargers overall as a collective unit this season. But overall, the Chargers defense is probably the best in the NFL. And I think if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers or even the Houston Texans, you do not want to see them in the first round of the playoffs. But having said that, though, that's still yet to be seen. Jim Harbaugh, though, I think definitely knows what he's doing, and Justin Herbert has had, I think, an underrated, sneaky year compared to what we've seen him do in the past. I think Herbert's really good, and there's a lot left to do if you are the Los Angeles Chargers, especially with a new head coach in Jim Harbaugh, who's not a rookie. He's been in the NFL before, but definitely an interesting situation there. I also want to point out what's important about figuring out things for the AFC wildcard race. Same thing in the NFC, because if you look at the NFC West right now, any one of those teams can essentially win the division. I think the Rams are going to, because I think they're just the best team on paper. The 49ers are falling apart right now. The Seahawks, I just don't buy them, even though the Seahawks have had some impressive wins that came out of nowhere. I still don't think that's going to be the case. And the Arizona Cardinals, nice, but not that nice. They still have a long way to go. That's going to be interesting. The South Division, as I mentioned before, definitely going to be kind of a horse race. The NFC North is going to be a horse race too, but it should be the Detroit Lions. They're definitely the best team on paper. So we'll have to see what happens with the Detroit Lions and the NFC North. It's going to be huge. Also look at the East. The Philadelphia Eagles should easily win that division as of right now, but Washington's kind of on their tail, and they have to play another game against them. But Philadelphia has just been on an absolute roll. They clearly look like the best team in that division, and I think the only team right now that we could definitely say could give the Detroit Lions fits right now in the NFC is the Philadelphia Eagles. So we'll have to see how that all pans out. Alrighty, so let's look at the Big Ten Championship now before we move on to the NBA and the Cleveland Cavaliers having a big game against the Denver Nuggets tonight. Penn State, Oregon, not Ohio State, because Ohio State lost to Michigan. It's more important that Penn State wins because it helps Ohio State in terms of trying to find a national title. But I don't want to celebrate a national title with losing to Michigan. To me, it's just not the same. That loss is still eking me up. But moving on from that Ohio State loss, Ohio State likely going to get an SEC team. When we look at the other top teams, you look at Georgia, and another argument I've heard before, Kirby Smart is 1-6 against Alabama, and he's probably not going anywhere. Sure, but Alabama, Georgia is not the game of all games. I'm just going to point that out. Alabama is important to Georgia, but I don't think it's the game of all games. I think Georgia has much bigger fish to fry. So that's one thing, too. If you're Ohio State, you're probably going to get an SEC team of some sort. Texas is another team probably getting a bye. So many teams have lost and won, and Indiana, are they going to make it now? It's getting really weird and nitty-gritty in terms of college football. But Penn State and Oregon, let me just get back to that. Penn State, if they win, that'll be a huge upset. I don't think they're gonna, because I think Oregon's the best team in the country, and Dan Lanning is the best coach in college football right now. So having said that, if Penn State wins, it gives Ohio State a huge advantage to have a home playoff game and possibly do some damage in the postseason. As I said, what does it give for this point? I think it also helps Georgia a little bit more because they may not have to see Oregon as soon as they may in the bracket. I think it helps Texas for the very same reason. Do you want to see Oregon in an earlier round, or do you want to see them closer to the national title game? I think you want to see them closer to the national title game when they've already played the best of best in college football. If you're Ohio State, clearly you're up there in the ranks. Ryan Day looking to try to win a national title because essentially it's national title or bust. I think that's his only chance of saving his job. And even then, I think people in Columbus are going to be pissed if that's the case. But looking at the college football scheme of things right now, the Big Ten Championship may determine a lot in terms of this playoff bracket. And Penn State is definitely in the playoff conversation too. Where do they go? Where do they get an opportunity to possibly host a game? It's all up there. And if they beat Oregon, and the rarity that they do beat Oregon, I don't think they will, but if they do beat Oregon, that's going to be huge for Penn State because they could host a playoff game. And it's going to be the same thing for Oregon. If they lose, will they still be in the top four? They should be, absolutely should be, because of that Ohio State win especially. But it's going to come down to the nitty-gritty wire in terms of that Big Ten championship game. And I think it'll help determine the entire landscape of the CFP top 12. All right, let's move on to the Cleveland Cavaliers in the NBA. The Cavs taking on the Denver Nuggets tonight. The Denver Nuggets, even though they're 11-8, they still have Nikola Jokic, who I think is the best player in the world right now. Jokic has been phenomenal. It's unbelievable what he's done for that organization and how he was missed. But, we can talk about how good Jokic is all day. Cleveland Cavaliers are the best team in the NBA in terms of record right now. Should they take care of business against the Denver Nuggets tonight? Yes. They're at home. It's an NBA game. They should beat the Denver Nuggets. Having said that, though, Nikola Jokic is still Nikola Jokic. Expect the Nuggets to kind of go on a tear at some point. The Milwaukee Bucks surely have been. The Bucks were an open mess to start the year. I still think Doc Rivers is a big part of their problems. I'll say that over and over again. But the Denver Nuggets are well coached. They have great talent on their roster. The Denver Nuggets are going to be a handful for the Cleveland Cavaliers tonight. I actually don't expect the Cavs to win. I think any team should expect their team to win at home in the NBA. But I think because of the Denver Nuggets and the talent they have on the roster, it is going to be crucial for the Cleveland Cavaliers to try to limit that and just offensively explode on this team. And we'll have to see if they do that. It's going to be very important for the Cleveland Cavaliers to keep up that offensive explosiveness. Donovan Mitchell has been phenomenal. Evan Mobley, look at that game the other night against the Washington Wizards. But yet that was the Wizards. Donovan Mitchell was your superstar, and he got it done against the Boston Celtics. So that's going to be key for the Cleveland Cavaliers to keep these stars on the rise and to keep things going and to keep the momentum straight. Kenny Atkinson, we know what he's delivered offensively. Now I think it's more on the players to kind of deliver it and take it home as the playoffs inch closer and closer. Now it's still December. We have a long way to go. But it's time for the Cleveland Cavaliers to keep this regular season hype going. I think this team is on their way to 60 wins, not just 50 wins. Keep it up. Maybe you have the best franchise record in history for the Cleveland Cavaliers and end up going like 65-17 or something. I think that's possible. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I think you expect every NBA team to at least lose 20 games. But the Cleveland Cavaliers are doing a great job of that. And can they keep it up against the Denver Nuggets? I think so. But I would not be surprised if this is a little bit of a tough stretch for the Cavs because they struggled against the Hawks and because they have talent, real superstars like Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray coming to town. We'll have to see what that turns into. So that's going to be big for the Cleveland Cavaliers. That's it for this cold edition of Raw Takes with Andrew Hody. Like, comment, subscribe as always. Stay safe, as I said, if you're in the snow up north. If you're down south, well then kudos to you for enjoying some nice weather, hopefully. Also check out the show on social media, X, Hody Andrew, Twitter. Of course, you can check me out there. You can find me on Facebook, Raw Takes with Andrew Hody, at Instagram, Hody Raw Takes. Of course, all the links to social media are in the description as well. Shout out again to the original Mike G and, of course, David the Bowler for your comments on the Raw Takes video. So thank you very much. Hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time on Raw Takes for Short Takes Saturday this upcoming weekend. Take it easy, everybody.